Welcome to the war, the information war. I'm DLAKE for PREZ, reporting for the MediaSpeaks.com. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah. Oh. I've got a DLAKE intro, right? Amazing. We're on the march. The Empire's on the run. All right. Tonight we're going to get into Rand Paul filibuster on the Patriot Act. It's happening right now. It's live. I just recently paused it, didn't I? Yes. And let's screen share and go to Rand Paul live. We'll unpause, even though he's taking a lot of his own pauses. I mean,
I've been to Chicago. I've been to most of our major cities.
Okay.
And I've also been to the places where there's been this anger. And I think people are angry because they don't feel like government's treating them justly.
I don't want to treat my viewing audience unjustly. I don't want them to be seconds or minutes behind the time it took me to set up. So let me refresh the Senate session. The Senate continued working on fast-track authority promotion legalization. Senator Rand Paul, the Republican from Kentucky, spoke at length in opposition to provisions in the Patriot Act related to the NSA, or the National Security Agency surveillance. And as we try to cue this back up, play. Thank you. Okay, for ladies, influence and image.
All of our records.
And if you're black and are afraid to go to the museum, I'm sorry.
The problem here is going to be something that adds on to a sense of unease that is in our.
We don't want to pause. We want to keep watching.
What happens is that everybody's not treated exactly equal. No, people don't have.
Oh, everyone's not treated exactly equal. Random. Is that why your father's campaign was derailed by the media? And Rand, how come there's no one sitting in those seats behind you? I think the media is going to ask you that tomorrow, pal.
One of the little noticed sections.
Facebook and Twitter right there, you can see at the bottom, want your thoughts and remarks on what Rand Paul is saying. So let's listen to Mr. Rand Paul, the senator from Kentucky, and please leave your thoughts and comments below on this live video. I'll see if I can answer them.
But I think the biggest problem with civil forfeiture is that we allow it to occur without a conviction. And I think no one should have their possessions taken to them. I think you should be innocent until proven guilty. I see the senator from Connecticut. If he has a question, I'd be happy to entertain a question without losing the floor.
Okay.
Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. I thank my colleague for giving me the opportunity to ask a question.
He's talking to the president. That's, the congressman that's sitting on the board of this, in case you were wondering. It's not Obama.
My colleague from Kentucky, I think, has taken the floor tonight in the highest tradition of the United States Senate to make.
And it was about around 1 o'clock, 1:30-ish, maybe my time, when I saw the breaking link that Rand Paul was beginning this filibuster. So right now, as DLAKE is broadcasting live, I'd say we're about 5 hours into Senator Paul's remarks on NSA surveillance. And please leave your thoughts below. This is Richard Blumenthal.
Of American data. And I agree with those who have pointed out that the USA Freedom Act is a strong compromise solution for protecting American freedom and security, at the same time striking a balance between preserving our security and protecting our precious rights. And I want to highlight for the senator from Kentucky, in his very insightful, as well as for my colleagues and others who make a particular part of that legislation.
Thank you for watching. You're watching me watch this,
that deal with the
and I'll comment where I feel few. Let's go back to the screen.
Program is example of why we need a stronger adversarial process. We know that bulk metadata collection is unnecessary. The President's own review group has made that clear. We also know that bulk metadata collection is un-American. This country was founded by
violates the Fourth Amendment.
General warrant, and no general warrant in our history has swept up as much information about innocent Americans as the orders permitting.
Creating too much hay on the haystack to find the, according to DHS and NSA, all the directors, and even whistleblowers like Benny, you know, said this would happen, and now it's happening, and Rand Paul's trying to stop it. But you know what? No one else is there except this guy, Blumenthal, Democrat from Kentucky.
Was never authorized.
Or excuse me, Connecticut. Pardon me.
How did we get here? How did we arrive at a place where one of the most respected courts in the United States says that the executive branch of our government has been collecting data on innocent Americans without legal authority to do so? In fact, breaking the law by invading Americans' privacy. We got here because the FISA court failed its most crucial test.
Now, to my knowledge, this guy's not running for president, but it sounds like he's starting to make some good points here. Let's continue.
Relevance, quote, relevance in the statute. Under the statute, the federal government can collect relevant information to decide whether relevant information means all information.
The originally set up to monitor communications outside of America, but then they've since found it with the Patriot Act relevant to monitor the communications of everyone and record everything you say. We'll parse it through Google and okay, here we go.
For a court normally extraordinarily reserved and understated in its characterization of illegality by the executive branch, but the court said it unequivocally and emphatically. The government was breaking the law. Never before in the history of the nation had such a bizarre interpretation even been entertained. At the very least, you would have thought that the FISA court would recognize that its May 2006 decision was important. If this question had gone to a regular Article III court.
Okay, I mean, what this guy is saying is great. I have a feeling he's about to pose some questions to Senator Rand Paul, who has been talking for, I believe, roughly 5 hours now. We all know that the senator from Kentucky is known for his 13-hour filibuster, originally standing up to protest the naming or nomination, I guess you could say, of John Brennan to the CIA. John Brennan became the CIA director. Of course, the media only covered the aspect in which Senator Rand Paul was talking about drones. Now, also keep in mind that Senator Rand Paul is running for president in 2016. And so to the media tomorrow saying that no one was in the seats behind him. And I originally went live to talk about Rand Paul doing this filibuster on the Patriot Act, to hear some of what he had to say, comment live, to be live with you. And then Mr. Blumenthal started talking. So I am sort of interjecting right now because I feel as though this is not exactly the direction that I was hoping to be at right now. But Mr. Blumenthal was making some good points. The D / Connecticut guy. So let's hear what he's saying. Okay, thank you. Let's mute there. Do we pause? Oh, stop the plugin. Oh no. DLAKE, what's happening to your show? Thought we were live. Are we still live? Let's try that again. And thank you to that one person that's watching me. Hope you find me attractive. Why don't you send me your number? I'm not going to get into your car until I see a picture of you. And then I'll be like, the picture that they sent was nothing like what they really look like. And I got into the car. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm talking about a Craigslist report I saw earlier in the week. Look, don't try to find love and happiness on Craigslist, okay? You'll have a better chance on Facebook. Great relationship that spawned from Facebook a few years ago. I mean, you know, as years go by, everything changes. Still miss that individual. Let's not get into it. You know, I don't want to talk about it. You know, we all move on. Sometimes DLAKE doesn't make the best decisions in the world, like what browser I should use or whatever. Let's try to get back to this live broadcast before I ruin the whole thing and end up with more dislikes than likes.
Without remedying the process.
Sounds like Blumenthal is still talking.
Because that process is so broken, it will make more mistakes, not only predictable, but inevitable. As technology evolves, we cannot say with certainty what the next big privacy issue will be. In 2006, the FISA court decided whether government can collect all of our phone records. In 2020, the government will have some new means of surveillance.
Screen share.
And they'll want to try it.
Screen share.
In 2030, we'll have another. We need a FISA court that we can trust to get the question right.
Okay, I'll agree with that. We need a FISA court we can trust.
Confidence in the integrity of the judicial system of Americans' private lives. We need a FISA court that operates transparently, openly.
We need a FISA court that operates transparently.
That operates in secret.
Transparency, openness, letting we the people these private emails and the emails she deleted and how Huma Abedin filled in with her. Or how Susan Rice filled in for her on the Sunday show. Look, I don't want to talk about it. I'm getting really pissed off because my screen share is not working.
Hear from both sides of the issue.
Look, no one wants to see me. They want to see L. Jackson blow the fucking head off the president and the Kingsman.
Why?
That's what they really want to see.
Not to hear both sides. If it chooses to
somehow
do so,
I
it
corrupted
would bring transparency to the FISA court decision, requiring them to.
Thank you, Mr. Blumenthal.
Sense of American justice.
Yeah.
That an adversarial open.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for watching as well. It looks like I have more viewers now. That's amazing. DLAKE, I wanted to cover Rand Paul's filibuster on the Patriot Act is sort of letting Mr. Blumenthal, the Democrat from Connecticut, speak his mind, speak his piece. There was some good stuff in there. Not exactly the show that I wanted to cover. I was hoping to get more of Rand Paul's thoughts and opinions. Of course, now everyone's dropping off and now great. That's wonderful. You know, that's the problem with doing a live show. You never know what's going to happen. People walk by me. They're like, fuck her in her pussy. I'm like, dude, I'm trying to do a live fuck her in her pussy. I'm like, dude, I'm doing a live show. Fuck me in the pussy. I'm like, I'm doing a live show here. Come on. The video I saw earlier. My buddy said that it started with some old man saying, fuck her in the pussy, like in the background. I don't know. It's pretty funny. Oh, now I can't even. Oh, maybe I did get sound effects.
That sounds a lot like the so-called that caused our rebellion. This change will help ensure that we are not back in this chamber 9 years from now debating the next mass surveillance program that started without Congress actually authorizing it, as did metadata collection.
Okay.
It will help ensure that strictures of our Constitution are obeyed in spirit and letter.
The screen share is not working. I want you to be able to see what I'm seeing. Maybe you are, and I have it all wrong and backwards, but I'm trying to.
Effective. We need
Here we
those
go.
programs.
Here we go.
National security
There you
must be preserved and protected, but we need not sacrifice fundamental rights in the process. Unless and
Good
until
point, Blumenthal. Thank you.
reform is enacted, along with the other essential reforms, the USA Freedom Act, I will oppose any reauthorization of Section 215.
Okay, again, this is Mr. Blumenthal speaking, interjecting during Rand Paul's filibuster that we are covering live. Thank you, everyone, for watching. We are back on screen share. You can see Mr. Blumenthal there, the Democrat from Connecticut, Senator Richard Blumenthal speaking. Let's hear what he has to say.
In jurisprudence system are not open adversarial courts essential to the trust and confidence of the American people?
Yes.
And do we not need that kind of fundamental reform in order to preserve our basic liberties? I asked
Our basic liberties.
this question of my colleague and friend from Kentucky,
Senator
because I think that his on the floor of this Senate tonight is fundamental issues that need to be discussed and addressed. And I thank him for the opportunity to ask this question and address this body.
Well, thank you very much for that question. I think one of the points that you were making through the question was about the whole idea of the.
Okay, here we go. DLAKE for PREZ, themediaspeaks.com. I don't want to switch away from screen share because I might lose it again. And we'd rather look at the Kentucky senator than me. Thank you very much. Even though, you know, I would at least have one person sitting in this seat behind me as I was filibustering. Let's hear how Mr. Senator Paul, excuse me, addresses Senator Blumenthal's comments. Here we go. And here we go.
Side.
Thank you.
It's an inevitability that the truth is going to be lost and you're going to list in one direction. But I think that would be a huge step forward. But it does boggle the mind that we can have them
again. Rand Paul
that this
speaking
is
over
a
5 hours. He
investigation
could
that has
go
not yet
13
occurred.
plus.
Because
He's going to go until he
data,
can't stand any
and then we're
longer.
going to mine it some other time
Nice
for
carpet.
some investigation. So it couldn't be relevant to an investigation because there is not yet an investigation when they're collecting the data. And that no FISA court seemed to question that.
Can we question the carpet and the interior decorating in this room with no other people in it, Mr. Paul?
You're exactly right. And I think that there are things that we could definitely do to make it better. But I think the bottom line is we shouldn't be collecting bulk data on people who are not suspected of a crime.
Thank you. Yeah, it's called reasonable, you know, it's called the Fourth Amendment to the United States. Fourth, Fifth, First.
One of the sections of the Patriot Act that doesn't get quite as much discussion is Section 213.
Ooh,
And,
213,
the
everybody.
sneak and peek
Section
section is
213.
not up for renewal.
What do you
but
know about
something that
Section
also
213 of the
shows
Patriot
that
Act?
I was gone awry on this. Radley
I don't know what it
Balco
is.
has written
Should I go
about
Google
this
it?
in the Washington Post. And it's how something starts out just a little bit at a time and grows bigger and bigger and bigger. So in 2001 to 2003, law enforcement on sneak and peek searches. The 2010 report, though, said it was up to 3,970. But then now we're 3 years later, and in 2013, there's 11,129 sneak and peek searches, an increase of over 7%. Exactly what privacy advocates argued in 2001 would happen.
Sneak and peek.
And then the interesting, through these sneak and peek warrants that were intended to be a lower standard so you could catch terrorists, well, we're going after drug dealers. So in essence, we've gone
clandestine seizure of intangible evidence
to catch drug dealers down to its lower standard. To make matters worse, there are accusations and implications from data that maybe the
reasonable cause
has a racial or a disproportionate racial outcome. And so I think it's concerning that we're actually not using a constitutional standard, but a lower standard. Bradley Balco writes in an article from 2014.
Well, from an article that I'm looking at right now, there's no better place to dissect anti-Patriot Act demagoguery. Demagoguery, yeah, the demagogues, then in the fur around Section 213. All the rhetorical techniques used by Patriot Act critics conceal legal precedent, hide the judge, amend the statute, and most profoundly reject secrecy, come together in the attack on this provision. Here's how Section 213 works. Let's say an FBI agent has evidence that a Saudi chemical engineer in Virginia has been communicating with possible jihadists in Yemen about a local chlorine plant. The Bureau wants to examine the computer for evidence of a nascent plot to blow up the facility. However, if the agent shows up at the chemist's door with a warrant to search his hard drive, he will disclose the investigation. The Saudi is, if he is indeed a terrorist, will alert his fellow cell members in this country as well as abroad. The cell will destroy evidence of a plot whose investigation could have unlocked a major wing of Al-Qaeda. Notifying the Saudi of the government's interest could also put the FBI's lead informant, a Pakistani engineer in Maryland, at risk. Okay, thank you. Thank you. I love all these Saudis and Pakistanis. I mean, we live in a fucking America.
That I'm not comfortable granting it in more traditional criminal investigations. But I have zero confidence that there's any way to grant those powers in a way that will limit their use to terrorism.
Yes, thank you.
Law and order politicians, and many, but not all law enforcement and national security officials, see the Bill of Rights not as the foundation of a free society, but as an obstacle that prevents them from doing their jobs. Keep this in mind when they use a national emergency to argue for exceptions to the Bill of Rights. When critics point out the ways of a new law might be abused, supporters of the law all
Okay, thank you. Okay, DLAKE here. Plugins are crashing. You know, it's just like, DLAKE, you're going too long. You're talking too much trash. Go back from screen share back to you. Still have people watching amazingly. You know, Rand Paul is gonna probably filibuster for more than 13 hours. He has to top his last filibuster. Guys want to comment down below, ladies and gentlemen? Anyone want to guess the filibuster time? I'm saying the gentleman, Senator Kentucky Rand Paul, is on the floor of the Senate today. He started about 1 o'clock. I have a feeling he got some good rest. You know what I'm saying? Today, I have a feeling that he had a feeling that this was coming. Filibusters in U.S. history. I have a feeling that Rand Paul, who's also has already announced his candidacy for president 2016. Ladies and gentlemen, Hillary Clinton doesn't have the ability to do a filibuster. She doesn't have that ability. Rand Paul does. He's a senator from Kentucky. Okay. Look forward to Hillary not talking to the media for another 30 days before she answers 6 more questions in an obscure, not really answering the questions type of way that authors and journalists say that she is a lying person that they trust and can't believe. The record for the longest filibuster goes to the U.S. Senator Strom Thurmond of South Carolina, who spoke for 24 hours and 18 minutes against the Civil Rights Act of 1957, according to U.S. Senate records. Thurmond began speaking at 8:54 p.m. on August 28th and continued until 9 the following evening, reciting the Declaration of Independence, Bill of Rights, President Washington's farewell address, and other historical documents along the way. Yeah, you know what's a great way to do a filibuster? I'm going to go back to Rand Paul talking while I step away and use the restroom. But unfortunately for Rand Paul, he's not allowed to do that. He has a glass of water. He can drink water, but he can't step away from that podium. While the other people are speaking, I don't even think he can sit down. He has to stay on his feet, and he has to keep talking. That's what a filibuster is all about. Okay, this special show is about what is a filibuster. You don't even know what a filibuster is. But thank you for watching.
DEA agents are reportedly obscuring the source of these tips. For example, a law enforcement agent could get a tip from foreign surveillance, and he could look for a specific car at a certain place. But if instead of relying solely on the tip, the agent would be instructed to find his or own reason to stop and search the car. Agents are directed to use these sweeps under wraps and not to mention their reports or where they got the information. If we're going to use standards that are less than the Constitution for IRS investigations, for drug investigations, we ought to just be honest that we're no longer using the Constitution. If we're going to use the Constitution, then we shouldn't allow evidence obtained through foreign surveillance and through a lower standard to be used in domestic crime.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to take my time flipping these pages. Just take my sweet time. Oh, where am I going? Rand getting a little delirious, rubbing his eyes there. Not saying anything. Oh, I see some people walking behind him. No one's sitting down.
Which is basically getting
somebody sit right behind him so we can watch you.
And trying to come up with a different reason why you stop someone is something that.
Who's that blonde lady in the foreground? Really, you see the back of her head.
If we're
there.
not going to be honest about it, someone has to do something to fix this.
She's
after an arrest was made,
maybe the court transcriber.
Pretend that their investigation began with a traffic stop they got from our foreign surveillance agencies. The training document reviewed by Reuters refers to this process as parallel construction. 2 senior DEA agents who spoke on behalf of the agency, but only on condition of anonymity, said the process is kept secret to protect sources and investigative methods, but realize they're also keeping it secret from the judge, the defense lawyer, and the prosecution. Some have questioned the constitutionality, obviously, of this program. That's outrageous, said Tampa attorney James Fellman of the Criminal Justice Section of the American Bar Association. It strikes me as indefensible. Lawrence Lustberg, a New York defense attorney, said, any systematic government effort to conceal the circumstances under which cases begin.
I was sort of looking below as if these were comments, but it looks like play sections, unidentified speaker, 1 minute, 7 seconds in, the presiding officer, 1:21 in, the chaplain, 2:51 in, the presiding officer, the clerk, Those look like separate play sounds as I try to tell you what's going on as I freeze up my whole thing. Thank you. Stop the plugin again. Jesus, Harold, crying out loud. Thank you. Live refresh. Refresh the page, DLAKE. Thank you. Trying to keep this show live. I'm still sketchy about going back and forth between screen share, but here I am again. Thank you, everyone, for watching, joining the show. We are watching live. You're watching me watch Rand Paul do his live filibuster. I just predicted that it will go longer than 24 hours and set a new record for filibustering.
Realize also,
hopefully you just dropped out viewing because they're messed up like mine. So you can go comment on this video. Comment down below.
We also have them now.
Do you want to bet me right now
DEA officials in a highly
$20 that this filibuster will break the time record? You want to bet me? If you bet me down below $20
database that includes
verbally,
intelligence intercepts, wiretaps,
I'll consider that a handshake
and a massive database
and get your address and say $20.
This is problematic because it appears to break
I think I'm right. If you want to bet against me, if you think it will not go 24 hours or longer, if you think this filibuster is saying $20 if he doesn't break the time record, I think he's going to break the time record. There's no one in the audience. There's no one there watching him do the filibuster, but I have a feeling that after this 13-hour filibuster 2 years ago about John Brennan being appointed to the CIA and also drones, which is what they focused on in the media, I think this filibuster, for a guy that's running for president, it's got to break the record. He's got to break the record. $20 down below.
The report makes no explicit connection between the DEA and the earlier NSA bulk phone surveillance uncovered by Snowden. In other words, we don't know for sure if the DEA Special Operation Division is getting tips from the same database that's been the subject of multiple congressional hearings. We just know that a special outfit within the DEA sometimes gets tips from the NSA. There's another reason the DEA would rather not admit the involvement of NSA data in their investigations. It might lead to a constitutional challenge to the very law that gave rise to the evidence. Earlier this year, a federal court said if law enforcement agencies wanted to use NSA data in court, they had to say so beforehand and give the defendant a chance to contest the legality of the surveillance. Lawyers for Adel Dawad, who was arrested in a federal sting operation and charged, suspect that he was identified using NSA information, but were never told. Surveys show most people support the NSA's surveillance program strongly when the words terrorism or courts are included. But when pollsters draw no connection to terrorism, the support here that the intelligence is not only being used possibly for terrorism, but it's also actively being used in domestic criminal investigations of other Americans. Some of the companies have begun to push back. Some of them have begun to push back on the backdoor from government.
Okay, I have an update. I'm trying to see if anyone's commenting. Politically Incorrect said, DLAKE, run these in the old style so people can chat. It will help your view count. I'll have to work on that. Thank you, sir. And XJigA Fart X shared your. No, he said your. He can't even spell your with the apostrophe R. He says you're a faggot. So I guess you're my faggot, XGigA Fart X. You fucking homo. Fuck you. Go to hell. Piece of shit. You fart X ass fucking fart faggot. Well, I guess I NSA spied on your fucking name, Gig Fart X. Fuck you.
It sounds like you agree with FBI.
Yeah, Fart X agrees with the FBI. Yeah. Thank you. I don't see you doing a live hangout, Ramball, filibuster, X fucking fart faggot X, G fuck X, fuck you.
That if Yahoo gave the NSA access to this information, other countries could try and compel the company to do
You
the
like
same.
that, Five?
Mr. Rogers said he believed that
You want to get in here? You want to listen to some of
create
this?
a legal framework that allows the NSA to access encrypted information
No.
without upending corporate security.
Your live shows suck ass. We can go watch this ourselves. Well, then why don't you? You obviously looked up a link that said Rand Paul filibuster.
My position is, hey, look, this is from Rogers, Admiral Rogers. I think that we're lying, that this isn't technically feasible. He said the framework would have to be worked out ahead of time by policymakers.
Okay.
The back and forth came less than 2 weeks after Apple Incorporated chief executive Tim Cook leveled his own criticism at Washington, saying at a White House cybersecurity conference in California that people in positions of responsibility should do everything they can to protect privacy, not steal information. Mr. Rogers attempted to parry the questions, but also signaled he welcomed the debate. Still, Mr. Rogers did little to deflect recent accusations about NSA activities. For example, he refused to comment on recent reports that the NSA counterpart stole information from Gemalto NV, a large Dutch firm. This is the world's largest manufacturer of cell phone SIM cards. I think the accusations continue to mount.
Yes,
Everywhere
they
you
do.
look in our tech industry, you see them wondering about having backdoor mandates built into their product. And I think the senator from Oregon has been great at pointing this out and has written several op-eds talking about what the harm is to this of leaving a portal or an opening for our government, but that may well be exploited by hackers and may well be exploited by foreign governments. Does the senator from Utah have a question? From Oregon.
Colleague has made the point back to our government, particularly the FBI director, actually arguing companies into their system. And I wanted, because I know my colleague has been on his feet now for somewhere in the vicinity of 9 hours. So I think we're heading into the home stretch, and I think for people who are listening,
We're at 9 hours. I thought we were only at 5+, going on 6. Apparently, we're at 9 hours. Everyone, ladies and gentlemen, you know what? Maybe perhaps I got time zones confused. This gentleman says we're at 9 hours and entering the home stretch. I'm sorry, Senator Ron Wyden, Democrat from Oregon, but I have a feeling that Senator Rand Paul is going to go 24 hours plus, bitch!
about how
Longest filibuster, 24 hours,
collection
18 minutes by Senator Strom Thurmond. Second, U.S. Senator Alfonso D'Amato.
And
third,
you have to first and foremost get through this whole concept of metadata. You know, big deal about
what's
metadata.
the big deal about the metadata?
We had senators saying,
how come all the Democrats sound like Samuel L. Jackson and the Kingsmen? I wonder.
So innocent. If you know who someone calls, when that person calls, and how long they talk, that reveals a lot of private information. Personal relationships, medical concerns, religious or political affiliations are just several of the possibilities. Most people that I talk to don't like the government vacuuming up private information if those persons have done nothing wrong.
Thank you, sir. I agree with the things that you're saying. Now, this is a bipartisan issue, obviously, as the Democratic Oregon Senator Ron Wyden is saying.
In the course of this evening.
Yes.
But I want to take just a minute because I think, again, it highlights what the implications are.
The Cobra Commanders.
I have repeatedly pushed the intelligence agencies to publicly explain what they think the rules are for secretly turning American cell phones into tracking devices. They have now said that the NSA is...
Okay, this is a live show. I'm making a little bit of fun of the way the gentleman from is speaking here, but I'm liking everything that he's saying. It's not how you talk, it's what you say. Thank you. You don't like the way I talk, but you like what I say, right?
Plans
you like for PREZ? MediaSpeaks.com. Media Speaks.
Now, to be clear, I don't think the government should be electronically tracking Americans' movements without a warrant. What's particularly troubling to me is there's nothing in the Patriot Act, in addition, that limits this sweeping bulk collection authority to phone records. Government officials could use the Patriot Act to collect, collate medical records, financial records, library records, gun purchase records, you name it.
Yes.
Collecting that information in bulk,
and maybe wouldn't put so many words with
a very substantial impact on the privacy of ordinary Americans. And I want to be clear.
Yes.
I'm not saying this is what's happening today, but I want to make equally clear this is what the government could do in the future.
Okay.
So my question, as my colleague who has been on his feet for a long time.
And keep in mind, Rand Paul is not allowed to be sitting down while this gentleman is speaking. Okay? You can't sit down.
NSA collection of bulk records on innocent Americans. And I'd also be interested
of the Muslims.
in his views with respect to why we have not been able to get the government to give straight answers about the tracking of the location and movements of Americans with a cell phone that took place in the past. I'd be interested in my colleagues' thoughts on those two points.
Thank you. Can we get back to Rand Paul? Thank you. Mr. Widen the gap in your teeth.
Well, I want to thank the senator from Oregon for the great question, and also for
the great question
and really being the lead figure from the intelligence community.
Yes.
From the Intelligence Committee, you know, trying to make this better.
It's what he says that mattered.
I think our intelligence committees don't have enough people who are really concerned with the Bill of Rights as well as national defense.
Thank you.
And so we get a one-sided view of things. And over the years, I think you've been able to continue this battle in a healthy way, understanding both sides of it, both our national, but also understanding that who we are as a people is important, that we not give that up.
At this point, CNN has closed in on the Kentucky senator speaking. So you only see 1.5 to 2 to maybe possibly 3 chairs. Earlier in the broadcast, it was obvious that the room was mostly empty. And at the beginning of his, it was mostly empty. It was even reported on in the news. I'm relaying that news to you. I mean, if they do a pan out, I'll let you know.
That basically they were maintaining that this was relevant to an investigation. And apparently the way the process works,
I see feet moving back there,
it's
though.
relevant, but there is no debate
People
or
walking
dispute.
out. Fuck
it's
this
just
shit.
accepted as face value.
We need to spy
But
more.
I thought the Privacy Commission put it pretty well. And they said, well, how can it be relevant to an investigation that has not yet occurred? We're collecting all the
minority pre-crime.
We're gonna query it when we have an investigation.
We're going to query the pre-crime.
So you can't argue that it's
we can't
relevant to an investigation.
We can't stop the Garland, Texas shooting.
Yet.
The Hells Angels rioting in Texas.
And I think the
we can't stop 9/11. We can't stop anything.
Saying that something like this is
the only things that we stopped are we previously said ourselves. Thank you, FBI. Thank you, CIA. You guys are doing a great job.
Is a mistake. And
it was reported that the Al Qaeda terrorist attack in Benghazi was a pre-planned attack 10 days in advance. Thank you. Thank you.
And my actions, that hopefully leaders of your party and our
But the NSA couldn't stop it. But let's give them $1.7 trillion. Come on, Rand.
The goal of being here today has been to say to not only to the American people, but to say to the lead.
Oh, who was that just walked by with those white pants? Was that Hillary? Is she back there?
And that we shouldn't run roughshod over this by saying that there's a limit and a deadline and we don't have time for debate. We're going to
no time for debate.
I want to thank the Senator for Oregon.
We don't have time for your filibuster. That's going to set the record.
That we can get
the record.
The leadership of both going to allow the amendments that
refresh.
Your office and my office have been working on for 6 or 7 months now.
Well, my understanding of my colleague.
My understanding, you faggot.
Again, coming back.
My understanding, you faggot. No time for debate.
Phone records.
We don't have time for your filibuster. That's going to set the record.
Tracking people on cell phones and
cell phones and this other stuff.
Examined for the future.
Look,
I think
no one's commenting. Look, click that button that says join the conversation. I'll meet you on chat or Q&A.
Many of these amendments we've been working on are basically designed to address these issues where we haven't been able to get.
I'm willing to bet you $20 that this filibuster breaks the filibuster record. If you want to bet me, leave your comment below to bet me. I'll consider it a handshake. Okay?
Okay, that's it.
I'll send you $20 if I'm wrong.
The kind of oversight that the Congress.
We're going to be watching this. We're going to be watching this in the morning. Okay, it's 24. Okay.
Then it was time to
5 longest filibusters in history, right here.
And not enough.
24 hours, 18 minutes. Number 1. We're going to break the record. Rand Paul running for president.
Really seeks to get answers.
Bet me.
Use that information to change practices on a lot of these areas that have really gotten short shrift in the past. And I appreciate my colleague talking about the FISA court.
Unfortunately, this guy's voice is trying to put me to sleep like a fucking lullaby. Maybe I should do a Politics bedtime story. Hey, green eggs and ham. Look, tomorrow, the only thing the media is going to talk about, Paul read a segment from Green Eggs and fucking Ham. Come on! The Muslims don't eat ham.
Interpreting broad new surveillance laws, and it's been
that's insensitive.
Sweeping precedent
sensitive
about the government's surveillance authorities, all of being done in secret.
Secret.
And I will say, and I'd be interested in my colleagues' thoughts on this, that it is time that the court's significant legal interpretations be made public.
P.S. This is the way that I actually talk.
Law.
Yes.
That the people of this country
Connecticut,
have the chance to engage in debate about laws
I cut, motherfucker. No, I'm from Oregon.
Also,
from Oregon.
Who can say
there's no S's in Oregon. I can say it.
Constitutional implications.
Oregon.
There are other considerations than the government's point of view. So
I should not be DLAKE. You should not be allowed to record
so that
this
Congress and the
live.
Can hold the intelligence community
should not be able.
And I want to mention once again, we are talking about policies. We are not talking about matters that are going to reveal secret operations or sources and methods. We are talking about policies. So I think it would be helpful, again, as we move to wrap up, if my colleague from Kentucky.
And again, I am making fun of the way this guy talks, but he is bringing up a lot of valid points as he addresses back to Senator Rand Paul. Let's hear what Rand Paul is saying in this last segment, how he addresses what Senator about the Democrat from Oregon, not Connecticut, excuse me, I messed up on that previously. But let's hear how Rand is what Wyden is saying, and then let's get close to wrapping it up because I have a feeling this is going to go 24 hours, and I don't think DLAKE to go 24 hours. I don't even think Google Hangout will allow it, but.
Good question. And your office and our office have worked for a while to try to come up with some FISA reforms. One of them is sort of in the USA Freedom Act, but maybe could be better, saying that there ought to be a special advocate, or so there's an adversarial proceeding. One of the problems in the USA Freedom Act as it's written, though, is that the advocate is only appointed by the FISA court and doesn't have to be appointed by the FISA court. So it may well be that a FISA court that has given a rubber stamp to bulk collection may not be inclined to give a special advocate. I also think it's important that, as you've mentioned many times, that we should be able to get outside of a secret court to a real court where you really have an advocate that's actually on your side. So I think allowing for an escape hatch for people to appeal. So, for example, being told by a FISA court that bulk collection of all of the phone data.
Yeah, that's what Obama wants. He wants FISA courts, fast track, like all these like workarounds to not getting an official vote, or, you know, working around democracy in a communist fascist way.
But then you have a real trial with a real advocate on both sides. I think that's important as well. But I do have one question, or a question that you may be able to reframe into a question, and that is, can you give the public a general idea of what percentage of the overall problem of collecting American data is in the form of bulk data? And what percentage do you think is coming from executive order? And what do you think is from the 702 backdoor collection of data?
I would say that all of the matters we have talked about this evening, would be significant concerns with respect to ensuring that the liberties of the American people are protected without compromising our safety. So let's tick them off. Bulk phone record collection, millions and millions of law-abiding Americans. The executive order, 12333, that we talked about today, another very important area. And then Section 702, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act area, where is the target and the records of Americans are swept up in them. So I think we are addressing exactly one of the concerns that has come out in the last few days with respect to what Americans are concerned about. I know there's just been a brand new major survey that's been done. My colleague may have touched on it sometime in the course of the day, but Americans particularly want to know what information about them is being collected and who is doing the collecting. And in each of these three areas that I mentioned, there are substantial questions with respect to the privacy rights of Americans.
Well, one of the comments that we went through tonight was an opinion by
Thank you.
one of the attorneys in the Bush administration. And they said basically that there were authorities that they were given that were inherent authorities under Article 2 that gave them the right to collect data on Americans. But they also then concluded by saying that Congress had no business at all reviewing this data, that there was no authority, that there were basically powers given by the president to the president that Congress has no ability. I guess I would be interested in the form of a question, if you can ask whether or not you believe there are Article 2 powers of surveillance of American citizens that Congress has no business questioning.
My colleague is, and I remember those days well, basically summing up the argument of the Bush administration.
Wow.
And I and others, pushed back very hard, because it would essentially, if taken to its kind of logical analysis, basically strip the legislative branch of its ability to do vigorous oversight. So my colleague has summed up what was the position of the Bush administration, but like so many other positions that were taken during that period of time, once there was an opportunity to make sure people understood how sweeping it was, well, my colleague is an extraordinary sweep of executive branch power, basically relegating any role for congressional oversight to, yay much, and not on the central questions. So my colleague has summed up and said in those early days, and I had joined the intelligence shortly before 9/11, because this really was the first example I'd seen of just how some in the executive branch would try to lay out a theory of executive branch power that really just takes your breath away.
Just a follow-up to that would be, are those arguments still being floated from this administration that there are Article 2? There is a debate going on over this executive 12333, and the question is whether or not people are still trying to maintain that Congress has no ability to oversee or review it. But I've seen in the
number 5 longest filibuster in American political history was conducted by U.S. Senator William Proxmire of Wisconsin, who spoke for 16 hours and 12 minutes to stall debate on an increase of the public debt ceiling. Well, I thought Obama said raising the debt ceiling doesn't raise the debt. Oh, excuse me. Mr. Proxmire was talking about that back in 1981. Proxmire was about the nation's rising debt level. The bill he wanted to stall action on authorizing a total debt of $1 trillion. $1 trillion. Proxmire, you idiot. No. USDebtClock.org. Let's take a little fancy look-see real quick. Oh, all my Flash plugins have crashed. Let's see if the page comes up. U.S. national debt, $18,234,061 million. Oh, wait, has it gone down? I thought we were over $19 trillion. Oh, I guess things are going good. Never mind. Forget it. Forget I said anything. Thought we were already at $19 trillion. I guess we're only at 8. DLAKE for PREZ, themediaspeaks.com.
Foreign leaders. And people just found that, again, so out of the mainstream that when we brought it to light, Operation Total was gone within about 48 hours. So we have seen, my colleague highlighted the Bush administration proposal to basically have unchecked executive branch power, Operation Total Information Awareness. My colleague asked about 12333, which we have been reviewing. So yes, it is going to remain an ongoing challenge, because I think there is a sense that the executive branch is the only one that can really, deal with this kind of information in timely kind of fashion. Well, what we've seen with respect to bulk phone record, collection is that that's been not been about, timely access to relevant information. Experts with national security, those individuals this afternoon said this program does not make us safer, and we could get rid of it.
Dude, just has
rein in this unbranch of power.
We could. I'm allergic to unrestrained power.
The very valuable work my colleague has done.
DLAKE, are you allergic to power?
These kinds of practices, and why I've appreciated the chance to work closely with my colleague since I came to the Senate.
I think one of the most exciting things probably is the court case, the Second Court of Appeals, and their
back to Senator Rand Paul as we're covering his covering it live for the mediaspeaks.com. I believe the bottom scroll says Paul's 9+ hour remarks on NSA surveillance. Your thoughts? Please leave your thoughts below in the comments to this video. If you're willing to bet me $20, I say that the speech will go longer and will set a record longer than the 24-hour and 18-minute filibuster. That is the record. And if you bet against me and leave your bet against me in the comments, honor that as a handshake and send you $20 if I'm wrong.
Because you often have advocates from the government who say Fourth Amendment doesn't apply to any records once they're outside your house or in other hands. And I really think that you don't give up your privacy interest when you let somebody else hold your records, that you still maintain an interest.
Who's watching the video that wants to play the lottery? Huh? Bet me. Send me your address. I'll send you $20 if I'm wrong. Okay? It's me versus you. It's a bet.
Smith case.
I put my 20 on Mayfield. I won that 20. No matter how you win, I won. I said Mayfield. Okay, Mayfield Jr.
People really understand the implications.
You said Pacquiao. I said Mayweather. Not Mayfield. I said Mayweather Jr. I won. Okay.
I see my colleagues are on the floor, and I want to give them some time. But since you mentioned this question of
Mayfield, you know what I meant.
I think there was really striking language recently by Judge Leon of the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, talking about...
Dude, the way I'm making fun of this guy, the media is going to point out this guy's accent as if it's Rand Paul's fault. Watch. I predict that. They're like, then Wyden spoke for like an hour with his accent,
about a person, including their religion, sexual orientation, medical issues, and political affiliations. So you combine what the judge has described, I think correctly, as bulk collection, outdated court cases like the Smith case, which really wasn't updated in terms of what...
You know what? Honestly, so much of what Wyden and Paul are talking about are things that I've actually personally covered and said these are violations of the NSA. And to hear these gentlemen talking about it and having a conversation about it in a filibuster, I think is really pretty awesome. And I'm glad I'm covering it live. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
To do. In the past, where when we really get down to those final days, those last couple of days, there's always a lot of pressure to go along with some kind of short-term extension. And that's been the pattern year after year, every time there's been an expiration of the act. And I think what has been shown today is that kind of business as usual is just not going to be acceptable any longer. You have made that point and understood that we are going to be pursuing the effort to make sure that this time we're not just going to re-up a bad law, re-up a flawed policy, and say that, it's okay to continue a program. This was reauthorized in effect by the president a few months ago. This is going to be the last extension. This has got to be the last extension, and I'm committed to working closely with you and our colleagues to make sure that that's the case and to take the steps necessary to ensure that this is finally the last extension of a badly flawed law. I thank my colleagues for sticking with it.
I thank my colleagues.
Well, thank you. And I think that the American public's ready to end bulk collection. And I think there's a bipartisan across the aisle really approach. People want to end bulk collection. And that the time is now. Just can't keep extending this. I think probably the biggest deal is that Patriot Act doesn't even justify this. This is a program that needs to end because even those who read the Patriot Act, even those who love the Patriot Act, acknowledge the Patriot Act does not even give permission for. It has to end. And I think the American people will be very disappointed in us as a body. It doesn't end. This is the time to do it. I agree with you. We're going to do everything we can to stop it. From Utah. Does the senator from Utah have a question?
I do. At the outset of my question, I'd like to point out that while I disagree with you, Senator Paul, with regard to the specific question of whether or not we should allow Section 215 of the Patriot Act to expire in its entirety, I don't believe we need to do that. I would prefer that we pass the U.S. Act as passed by the House of Representatives by an overwhelming margin of 338 to 88 last week. While we disagree on that issue, I absolutely stand with you, Senator Paul, and I believe with the American people on the need for an open, transparent process and debate regarding this issue. And I also stand with you with regard to the belief that bulk metadata collection is not something that we can support, not something that the American people feel comfortable with, and that it's incompatible with the spirit, if not the letter, of the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, which we've all sworn an oath to uphold and protect and defend. Let's remember of the Fourth Amendment. The text of this amendment, penned in 1789, ratified in 1791, says that the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated.
Mike Lee with the Fourth Amendment. Come on, Mike Lee.
Cause
Mike
by
Lee.
oath or affirmation.
What, Mike Lee?
Particularly describing the place
What, Mike Lee?
to be searched.
What, Mike Lee?
Or things to be seized.
Mike Lee, you do
Not
presidential hairline.
Surplusage.
Your hairline is not acceptable for president. I'm sorry, Mike Lee.
Power of
I'm sorry, Mike
to make
Lee.
sure that when government goes
Mike Lee,
after
I'm sorry.
Things that are important
Mike Lee,
to our personal
your
lives,
hairline
things
is
that are
totally
part of our
unacceptable for president.
houses,
You
things
cannot
that
be
are
the
part of our
president.
papers, our
I'm sorry,
personal
Mike Lee. It's over for
These
you.
things can't just be grasped
What?
randomly by government.
What? You have good
Government has
points.
to have a reason
You
for going
talk
after
common
them. Government
sense.
has to be constrained in some
I didn't see
meaningful
you
way
in a
in the way that it goes
celebrity boxing match with
When the government
Vander
relies
Holyfield
on
or anything
a
like
warrant,
that, or you don't have any specials on
describe
Netflix
the things or the places to be searched with particularity. The people subject to them need to be identified with some particularity. And you know, these words were meant to be flexible. They were meant to be molded from time to time in different circumstances. They're not absolute in their terminology, and that's one of the reasons why they've endured for well over 2 centuries and why they've been able to adapt to changes in technology.
What, Mike Lee?
But there's not any reasonable construction of this language that I think can countenance what the NSA is doing and what we're talking about here, which is the bulk collection of telephone metadata. Now, what's happening is that the NSA is getting these orders from the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. And these orders basically tell the service providers, give us all your data. Give us all your records. All of them. We don't really care whether they're relevant to an ongoing investigation of a particular person or of a particular terrorism ring or a particular foreign intelligence group of activities. We want all of them. Send all of them to us. We're going to put them all in a database. We're going to search them when we feel like it. Now, I don't dispute the claim made by the NSA that there are a limited number of people who have access to this database. nor for purposes of this discussion. I'm not going to dispute, and I have no basis for refuting, the assertion that the people who work at the NSA are well-intentioned, that they have our national security interests at heart, that they're there to protect us.
But they're doing it all wrong. Is that correct? Senator Mike Lee. Thank you. I'm dealing this live show. Thank you, everyone, for dropping off and not watching any further when I come back on. Thank you. Anyways, something that I wanted to point out is just real quick to the live broadcast of the filibuster that I predict will go over 24 hours. If you predict it will be less than 24, bet me in the comments. I'll send you $20 if you're right and I'm wrong. DLAKE for PREZ, NSA. NSA vows to spy even more. Happy birthday, DLAKE. On my birthday, that was a special I did for the MediaSpeaks.com. NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden, Bilderberg, and China's Falun Gong organ harvesting. Another popular DLAKE video. Bill Binney for PREZ charged with espionage. Edward Snowden's limited hangout Christmas, the MediaSpeaks.com. Puppy played at Gitmo, Guantanamo Bay, NSA myths, Dogecoin and cryptocurrency, a special report on the MediaSpeaks.com last year. Glenn Greenwald versus The Rock, the movie The Rock, another awesome remix by DLAKE for PREZ. 252 Obama lies with DLAKE for PREZ. That's kind of a long one. NSA spying on Americans. Prism. And you'll hear the gentleman from North Carolina, South Carolina, Kentucky, Texas, Connecticut, everyone talking about prism, likely. Continue.
Be relevant in one situation and not another, whether or not it's a lot of facts and circumstances pertinent to the investigation in question. But it stretches the term relevant, or the concept of relevant, beyond its breaking point, beyond any reasonable definition. If you deem something to be relevant, so long as it in some future investigation, one that has not yet arisen, become relevant, such that you have to gather every record of every phone call made in America, such that the NSA wants to go after every record of every phone call made by every American going back 5 years, storing that series of records in a single database that can be queried for up to 5 years in advance. Let's just go through this exercise for a minute. Think to yourself, how many people have I called in the last 5 years? How many phone numbers, how many distinct phone numbers have I called in the last 5 years? Well, if somebody has called 1,000 phone numbers, or let's say made phone calls to 500 phone numbers and received phone calls from another group of 500 phone numbers, for a total of 1,000 phone numbers over the last 5 years. And that's 1,000 numbers. And then the NSA goes out one hop beyond that and connects each person, each phone number with whom the original person had contact. Let's assume that each of those phone numbers had in turn had contact with 1,000 numbers. You get to a million phone numbers pretty quickly. But each time the NSA collects these data points, each data point taken in isolation might not say much about that person. But as our friend and our colleague from Oregon noted a few minutes ago, it's by using that combination of data points, by aggregating all those data points together, someone can tell an awful lot about a person. In fact, there are researchers who, having used similar metadata and assembled similar sets of metadata in their own databases, have concluded that they can tell what religion a person belongs to, what political party someone belongs to, their degree of religiosity, and their degree of political activity. They can tell what someone's hobbies are. They can tell whether they have children, whether they're married. They can tell how healthy they are, what physical ailments they might suffer. They can tell what medications they're on. And all of these things are made more efficient by virtue of the automation in this system. And so while it's true, people point out that under Section 215 of the Patriot Act, under this particular program, the NSA is not listening to telephone conversations. They're not listening to them. Interestingly enough, this is very often a straw man argument. It's
a straw man argument. And I appreciate you all for watching, the live coverage on my channel as I present it live, pausing a little bit. But let's get back to Senator Mike Lee, the Republican from Utah's comment. And ideally, we'll hear what how Rand Paul,
that accusation of falsehood is itself a straw man effort. It's a red herring. It's a lie. It's a lie intended to malign and mischaracterize those of us who have genuine, legitimate concerns with this very program. Because the fact is, we don't make that argument. The argument we're making is that the NSA doesn't even need to. The NSA can tell all kinds of things about people just by looking at their data. And because it's automated, and because it's within a system that operates with a series of computers, they can tell it very quickly. It's a lot less human resource intensive than it would be if they were having to list.
It says stopping